Hi, I'm Jennifer Harman. When you sit down in a game with nobody you recognize, you have your work cut out for you. The first thing you have is your first impression. The things you have to be careful of is your first impression might be wrong. So it's very important to stay focused and to watch your opponents and being able to adjust to their play and not only go with your first impression, because that might change. Some of my first impressions is how they throw in their chips. You can tell that if they're a beginner or not by the way they put in their chips. That's my first indication. I mean, if they know how to bet and they know how to put out their chips, you basically know that they've been at a poker table before. So that's my first indication is how they bet. How they stack their chips is another indication. If they're making designs, they've been at a poker table with their chips. But if they stack them like kind of sloppy, you pretty much feel that they're going to play poker sloppy too. If they're everything's all neat, you pretty much know that they're probably a solid player and they can play poker. But the things you need to be careful of is internet players coming to live games. They may not get the betting part with the chips right, and it might seem like they're a beginner to you, but they're actually not. They're used to clicking with a button instead of putting chips out. So you really have to watch that too. And also them shuffling their chips, playing with their chips, all that kind of, that behavior will tell you if they've been at a poker table before. If this person sat down at my table, my first assessment of him would be that fairly conservative, he's got a suit on, fairly passive. And I say passive because of the way, it's hard to describe. The way his face is, the way his eyes are not completely focused. He's not, he doesn't seem like a very focused person as far as this picture goes. So that would make me think that he's a little passive. He's got a little smile on his face, so you could tell that he might be a little nervous. These are actually, the passive conservative opponent is my favorite person to play. And the reason that is because they wait for flops. They wait to hit their hand. And in poker, you can't always wait to hit your hand because, of course, it's impossible to hit your hand all the time. So with these kind of people, you want to put pressure on them. So what I'm talking about pressure is if you don't if you take the lead before the flop and you don't hit your hand on the flop, you want to bet most of the time because he's going to fold if he doesn't hit anything. Now if he calls, you know that he's passive, so he actually made something. If he raises, you know that he probably has a big hand and you should play your hand cautiously. But you're going to take down more pots than not with this kind of player because you're just going to put pressure on him and he's going to give up without a fight. And those are your best opponents. Okay, now this guy, everybody knows, this is Gavin Smith. And he's actually a better player than what he looks. Because if you saw this person, you would think of with that baseball hat and back of his head and the shirts, probably not ironed and it might be not buttoned, correctly. These type of players just want to have fun. So most likely they're not going to be as focused in the game. They're going to just be, gambling. You have to pay attention to more what he does after the flop than probably before the flop because this person is probably going to play a lot of hands before the flop. So it's really kind of hard to gauge what they have before the flop. So you basically have to watch what they do after the flop on the turn, and that's where you're going to pick up your information. He doesn't seem like the type of person that's going to make moves on you. He's just out there to have fun, and he might give up or he might call you a second pair.